Yo, what's good with y'all? It's Keymajor and I'm back with another video for y'all today. Today I'm showing you guys how to make some hard, dark beats for Lil Durk's new album. If you guys enjoy and learn something new in this video, make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe, and let's get straight to the video. So the first thing we're breaking down is the sample, which the sample is very simple. So for this sample, I used a starter from Juco, which I ended up flipping. This is the original starter. So yeah, even though he sent it as a starter, I feel like it was already really full and already had everything it needed. I just wanted to flip it and chop it up into something different. So the first thing I did is it was at 162 BPM. So I exported the entire sample without the stems. And I just did two things. The first thing is I clicked up here to the stretch audio and I just grabbed the tail of it and I stretched it out so it's half the speed. And then I also put it on stretch so it doesn't change the pitch. So I could change it myself, which I pitched it down 500 cents. And I also raised the BPM to 165. Drums to be very fast, so I wanted the sample to be a lot slower. It's just a way of kind of blending in the whole beat instead of having the sample be fast and the drums as well. And then after that, I just chopped up every 8 bars and I made the order I wanted. And then I also had this layer right here, which I just duplicated and I pitched it up an octave. And then I grabbed this little circle right here to turn the volume down by -7 so it's not so loud and it doesn't take over the sample. For the effects, I just had an EQ cleaning up the lows, and then a sound shifter pitching up 1, and a soft clipper just to raise the volume. And then I exported it into this sample right here. So yeah, very simple. With a couple simple tricks, I flipped it into its own different sample, something a lot slower, a lot darker, and this was perfect for that new Durk album. So now we're in the FLP where I made the full beat, and here all you have is the sample, the 2 drum patterns, and then some automation clips. There's this one song on Durk's album produced by ATL Jacob, and I wanted to go just for that sound, so I knew I wanted to pick up a distorted 808. Now this 808 I think is from DB's Distro 2. Then I got this Utopia snare, just a regular hit 1 hi-hat. And then lastly, this bell. So now getting into the patterns, I have 2. I have one that's a lot more simple and then one's a lot more complex. We'll start with the simple one. So for the 808, I did a very simple basic pattern. All I did is at the end, I added this little stutter, which just made the pattern a little more unique. And then the second half, I copied it just up an octave. On the 808, I just lowered the highs a little bit because it was too harsh, and I lowered some of the low end. On top of that, I added this snare. Now this snare I think is also from the Distro 2 kit with DB and the Wizard. For the drums on this beat, I knew I wanted to add some complex hi-hats, so I knew not to go too crazy with the 808 or the snare and make room for the hi-hats. But it could be vice versa. If you want to have a very complex 808 pattern, a lot of your other sounds will be more simple to make room for that instrument. And then next we just have the hi-hats. The only thing that changes in the second half is the hi-hats are a little more complex, and I also add 2 more sounds. But for the first one, the hi-hats are pretty simple. I just started with this pattern. Just literally removing the second note, giving more bounce. I wanted the rolls to be a lot faster, so I did the 1/3 step. I just added these little stutters and then a full-on roll. And I wanted this to be very repetitive throughout the beat, but I didn't want it to be annoying, so I lowered the volume for these just by lowering the velocity. And that was basically for the first half. So for the second half, the 808 stayed the same, except I just changed the hi-hat pattern. So I kept the original roll, but for the second half, I added this new roll right here. So one thing I did in the hi-hats to capture the specific sound is I went in the envelope and I made it into the square. So what this is doing is right when you let go of the hi-hat, the sound will cut off. And I did that instead of enabling cut itself. And for these rolls, I went in 1/4 step instead. And I just did this little stutter and then a roll. I just made it go down. Copied this over for the second half. I just brought it down an octave and I made the roll longer. Next, I added this very simple open hat. I'm just having it hit on the downbeat twice. I'm having these last notes right here. And to just make the drums a little more unique, I added this little stutter down here. And I just did that by enabling cut itself, putting down a note and then duplicating it and then just dropping the velocity all the way down. And then lastly, this bell. So for this bell, I did the same thing as the open hat. I just laid it on the downbeat, and at the end, I did this little stutter note. But that's basically it for the drums. On the effects, with the Utopia snare, I just EQ'd it a little bit, took out the lows and raised the highs since the snare was kind of like muddy and low. And then I added a loop raider on the hi-hats. This was more for the second half. I just added a couple reverse notes. I added this little vinyl effect, vinyl 2, and then lastly, just an envelope to cut it off. But I basically just added these where I felt like they fit. I didn't want to do too much. And I also lowered the volume on the blue one, so it's not too harsh. It doesn't take over the whole hi-hat pattern. And as you can listen, I added the reverse right before these rolls would play, so I could have the effect and then it would roll into it. Just kind of having the instruments bounce off of each other instead of having everything play together. That's another thing I recommend to do with your drums. For the master, I always use the soft clipper to make my drums hit hard. I use the threshold at -13.8. Anywhere around this area, you could just leave it. This is basically just kind of creating a ceiling for your drums, and the post gain is basically just how loud you want it to be. And then you could add an EQ if you want. I know a lot of people use this one, but I personally just do it on the stock EQ. I just lower the lows a tiny bit and I raise the highs a little more. This is just cleaning it up so the bass is a little lower and it doesn't fully take over the whole beat. And then I'm raising the highs just for the drums to be a little more crisp, not have a beat be very muddy. But that's pretty much it. This is the final beat. But yeah, other than that, the whole beat's pretty simple, but it does the job of hitting hard and being dark. If you guys want a more in-depth tutorial on how to make dark samples from scratch with no starters, no nothing, I have a video in the top right corner. And especially, I know a lot of you guys struggle with sound selection, so if you do struggle with sound selection, I recommend going to the first link in the description down below and checking out some of my sound kits. I have my Onyx multi-kit, which is my most recent one, and then I have my Vanguard creative kit. This one's more for sample makers. And then lastly, my coding files kit with Keyon, which just has everything all bunched into one. Now, except the coding files kit, all of these are only $10. First link in the description. With that being said, if you guys did enjoy this video and learn something new, make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell so you don't miss any more videos. Follow my Instagram, maybe on the screen right now, and I'll see you guys in the next video.